what are you working on now? You gave me a sense before we started live streaming this, so perhaps for the audience, you can give them a brief glimpse of what you're working on.
So I've gone back to an old interest of mine, which I've written a lot of magazine articles and periodical pieces about over the years, but I've never actually published much about it between hardcovers, other than odd essays in the Age of Kali and Nine Lives. And this is the whole magnificent story of early Indian civilization and the diffusion of it out into the rest of Asia and the world. I've always loved Gandharan and Kushan art. I've always loved the Ajanta caves. They've been writing about 20 or 30 years in Pallava. But this book brings it all together. And the idea, it's called The Golden Road. And it's the story of how between the time of Ashoka and the 11th century, India exported its civilization, its ideas, its cultures, its way of life, its languages, its numbers, and its science to an incredible great swathe of the world. Part one in this book is the story of Buddhism's journey north and eastwards through what's now Pakistan and Afghanistan, ancient Gandhara, into Central Asia, and then along to China. And it culminates, a lot of the book is revolving around a single year, 664. And what happens in part one is the Empress Wu Zetian, who's the only female emperor in Chinese history, converts China to an Indian religion, to Buddhism. And she does this for partly very practical reasons, that the Confucian system does not approve of women ruling. And that Buddhism, being more egalitarian, does not have the same strictures. So, and with Buddhism comes, like a Trojan horse, a whole band of Indian ideas about cosmology, about kalpas and yugas, and the ways of looking at the world, geography, and so anyway, that's part one. Part two is the whole, in a sense, Sheldon Pollock story of the Sanskrit cosmopolis, the story of how Sanskrit and Hindu culture spread from Kandahar, ancient Gandhara, to Singapore, ancient Singapura, two Sanskrit names thousands of miles apart. And this extraordinary story of how Sanskrit and Sanskrit literature, great epics, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and also ways of looking at the stars and studying mathematics and so on, spreads right through, even as far as the Philippines, right down through Burma, through Sri Lanka, through Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, and it culminates obviously in Cambodia. And I'm focusing in on the building of Angkor Wat, which is, of course, the largest Hindu temple in the world, but not in India, it's in Cambodia.
Yeah. And where the script, I think, resembles the South Indian Grantha script, you know.
Absolutely. And Pallava Grantha is the ancestor of almost every South script in one way or another. But the Khmer script is particularly close. And the third part is the bit that I'm most spectacularly ill-equipped to write, being virtually innumerate and having failed every maths exam I've ever taken, is the story of how Indian mathematics and astronomy travel westwards. And the way it happens is very interesting. Again, 664, same year that Wu Zetian comes to power. You get the Arabs in that great first expansion of Islam that gets as far as Karachi in the Indus on the coast. It gets as far as Balkh, the great city of Balkh in Afghanistan, to the north. And the hereditary pramukhs of Balkh, who run this center of learning called Naubahar, which is in many ways the Nalanda of Central Asia, convert to Islam. And one of their sons, who is currently at university in Srinagar, in Kashmir, is sent off as a hostage to Resafa, which is near the ISIS headquarters today in Syria. And there he meets Al-Mansur, who's the future caliph of the Abbasid, indeed the Abbasid revolution. And they together build Baghdad. And the pramukhs become the barmaks, in Arabic, who are the viziers of Abbasid Baghdad for 4 generations. And they bring the Sanskrit learning that they've been brought up with to Baghdad, which is how you get the beginnings of the Beit al-Hikmah, the great center, the great library of Baghdad, and why what the West knows as Arabic numbers, in fact, are Indian numbers brought from India at this time and adopted by the Barmak Barmakid intellectuals, and then spreading throughout the Islamic world. And the final chapter is the story of how a young boy from Pisa is sent off to school in Algeria because his dad runs the customs house there. And he is brought up and absorbs these what has now become Arabic mathematics, but is in origin entirely Indian, the work of Aryabhatta and Brahmagupta and Paramahira and all these characters. And he goes back to Pisa, and he takes this new numeral system to the court of Frederick II, and that man is Fibonacci, of the Fibonacci sequence, Leonardo Fibonacci. And that is how the numbers we all use today, which originated in India, are on the screens of the computer or the mobile you're watching this on at this moment. And it's a story some people know some bits of, but it's kind of a story that lots of people don't know lots of other bits of. And if you see it all as one thing, which is this sort of vast diffusion of Indian ideas, it's something which I think, Indians should be very proud of. And there is this vague idea that, India had sort of, space travel at the time of the Mahabharata, or plastic surgery, Ganesh and all the rest of it. But the real story is so spectacular and so unknown, even to many Indians, many of these aspects and certainly the nuances, that you don't need to make it up. You don't need to chest beat crazily about internet at the time of the Ramayana or something. The real story of the brilliance of Brahmagupta's mathematics and his understanding of the curvature of the earth, the story of how the Mahabharata names from the Mahabharata crop up in Thailand and Java and Indonesia. Indian forms of architecture can be found as far away as Japan and China. These are extraordinary stories, and there's libraries. This is not new, any of it. But I think it's been brought together in one book, so that's what I'm working on, and have systematically bitten off more than I can chew. It'll be a while.